let's move to page 25, the 10-year monitoring report. Staff.
Sorry, I thought it was item 10, did you say?
Sorry?
Item 10, did you say, or are you going to the monitoring report?
No, I'd prefer to do one of the smaller items first.
Item 10 is good.
Item 10.
Okay, let me find item 10.
Page 75.
75. Bite-sized.
All right, let's do that. Item 10, which is the gardens. Helen, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Councillors and Leadership.
I'll move if you like.
Yeah, do you wish to speak to the report?
Yeah, just briefly.
Okay.
One moment. So the purpose of the report is really just an update on the financial status of the Hamilton Gardens. We have reported earlier on the what the project involves, but there is a booklet available today if anyone would like to review that for more information. The total cost of this phase of the project is just over $7 million, and that includes 1/3 targeted rate funded and 2/3 external funding. So the project is underway, and to date we've secured just under 3.5 million in external funding, and that leaves us just over 1 million left to fundraise. We still have 2 years remaining of the project, so we're confident that that can be achieved in this time frame. I'd like to highlight the partnership focus of this project has resulted in quite a lot of profile and promotion of the gardens. The lottery significant project funding was successful to the amount of 2.5 million, and we have received quite significant promotion as a result of that through the media. But also it's provided quite a lot of leverage with other funders and sponsors, which has been a real benefit. We've also seen an increase in visitor numbers since this project was started. At Easter and Christmas we had record numbers of visitors to the gardens. The table on the last page just shows that we are running ahead of schedule because of the success that we've had with funding to date. So we've been able to bring elements of the project into this financial year, and we continue to manage the budget accordingly as funding is received. So happy to take any questions.
Could I just add one thing, Mr. Chairman? You're probably aware that last week we won the Society of Local Government Managers award for the Community Council Relations category of their annual awards for this development project, and we also won the Supreme Award across their 5 categories for this project as well. So the judges of that actually highlighted the quality of the work that's been done and the planning and execution and the team that's worked on this, from council decisions, our project governance group, right through to the delivery group, obviously Peter, his team, the funding side of things with Lucy, external funding manager, and also around the communications and marketing side of things, which has led to those increasing numbers that Helen's talked about.
Congratulations on that. Okay, questions? Councillor Mallett?
I endorse the congratulations, and I'm just going to move the report be received.
Okay. Any questions before we do that?
Second it.
Yeah, it's not a question but a comment. I would like to make a comment if I may.
Yeah, you may.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's I would also like to take the opportunity to congratulate staff, but I'd also like to name staff as well, because I know there are a number of people that work really, really hard behind the scenes and really put their life and soul into projects, and particularly this one here. So, look, I would like to really acknowledge the External Funding Manager, Lucy, Anastasia Duhobs, yourself, Helen, and of course our General Manager, Lance Vort, and Peter Sergel and his team. So, I mean, that's the I think the crux of the crew that really drive and deliver and work extremely hard behind the scenes, and the results speak for themselves, not only locally, regionally, nationally, but internationally as well. And look, I'm really confident that we're going to secure the balance of funds, just over $1 million within the time frame that we've set ourselves as well. So congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
Yeah, I support everything that Councillor Forsyth has said, and I certainly, as we all do, express our gratitude, to the people who have contributed and the difference they'll make. And also, I think with the External Funding Committee chaired by Councillor Forsyth, this is not just chucking thanks around. I think that's played a very significant role in terms of having a bit of a one-stop shop as to when and how we do this stuff. And I think, the nature of the Mayor's office and the Mayor herself has been quite critical, because there are those discreet conversations that happen, the warm-ups, the I won't say schmoozing, but the kind of the interactions which are not necessarily seen widely, but become very critical to a positive outcome. And I think my observation is probably this city is in a better place in that kind of area than it may have been historically.
Thanks, Councillor Gallagher. So we have Councillor Mallett has moved. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Chesterman. Is there any discussion on the motion that the report be received? There being none, I ask those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, let's move back to item 14, which is on page 94, which is the Gallagher Academy of Performing Arts annual report. And welcome Jeremy Bell, as well as Andy, to present that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Your Worship, Councillors. This report really is around the successes achieved by the Academy in 2015. I take the report as read, but I would like to introduce you all, if you haven't met, to the Academy Manager, Jeremy Bell, and we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
I have a question for the Chairman.
Apologies. Okay, questions? Your Worship.
I just wanted to get an understanding of the difference between community and educational and how you might categorise them, because the university is an educational institution delivering educational services. So how do you pop into that category, and do you delineate out that into a subcategory?
Yeah, I kind of have to go right back to the original contract between the City Council and the University, which defines those 4 separate areas which are laid out in the data usage in the report. And it does specify, without really defining very clearly, just a community-educational usage.
What does that say?
I take educational in that sense to mean local educational organisations, such as schools, basically.
Yeah. Oh, like primary schools or
primary
dance schools or something?
Yeah.
Okay, and they might be coming because it is part of the education curriculum?
They're probably doing school shows, actually. Not quite sure how that relates to their curriculum, but...
Okay, and then community would be, for example?
Community is very broad. Cantando choir, local music groups, local dance groups, local drama groups, local, and I've also separated out in the data usage what you might define as cultural use, which would predominantly be Māori groups, but also it had some Chinese cultural groups come through last year. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I've got Councillor Gallagher and then Councillor McPherson.
Obviously extremely supportive of the day-to-day operations, as you would expect. Maybe ironic given a surname I have, but I wonder how many people fully realise on a partnership basis that our city has put just under $3.8 million into the facility. It does 25% of the running costs, was a cornerstone funder, and without the council it probably may not have happened. And yet, apart from a mention of one councillor on the plaque, and this is about information for our ratepayers, because you may have read we're correctly getting some intense interest around the performing arts in our role. Did you have any comment on that? Because with respect, and I say this respectfully, I think we could do better in terms of the council's role in that facility.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have to acknowledge and thank the council for its involvement with the whole concept of the academy right from the beginning. Without the council's relationship with the university, the academy would never have happened. It is absolutely the cornerstone of why the building was built in the first place. And it grew out of, at the time, separate needs within the community. The university was looking for spaces to develop a space for its own teaching programs in performing arts, but at the same time, City Council, and this is back in the mid-90s, was looking at developing its own performing arts facility on the riverbank, actually beside Waikato Museum. And money was put aside at that time for development in that area. And somebody said, but who's going to use it during the daytime? And I think that was a very pertinent question, and at that point the discussion began between the university and the City Council about joint usage of the building, and that basic principle has been there right from the beginning. This is used for university teaching and also community arts access and social function access as well.
As part of our discussions on future, arrangements moving forward, when the current one comes to an end, is it fair to say that the university would be open to focused with us explaining that partnership perhaps more effectively than is currently the case? And I certainly don't detract from the wonderful other sponsors, obviously, but it just seems to me, respectfully, a lot of our residents don't perhaps fully appreciate what we are doing in the performing arts area, and this is a strategic part of our package, so to speak. But if you go there and visit there, you don't really get a sense of that.
Look, I would agree with that. I think the fact that the City Council has such a large investment in the facility is perhaps not blazoned as much as we possibly should. It's also a partnership thing. I think City Council also needs to embrace that the Academy is part of its suite of performing arts facilities. And this conversation earlier on this afternoon about Rivoli, and which referred also to Clarence Street and the Meteor Theatre, the Academy is also a major arts facility within the city, and part of, and that phrase that Sarah used and you yourself picked up about the cultural ecosystem of this city, and it's an essential part of it.
Because I sort of kind of would say, obviously, as it fair's fair, nearly $3.8 million of citizens, our Hamilton's money, gone into the facility. And it just seems to me, and I'd say this with respect to our staff who've been very helpful in getting some of this information for me, is I think we as a council need to really sell what we are doing, because I think we've actually got a positive story.
Yes.
And that partnership's very positive too, I hasten to add.
Yes. I absolutely think that hopefully we will renew the relationship beyond November 2018.
And you'd be certainly open to discussion around how we explain it.
Absolutely. And we have a new Vice-Chancellor, I think, is very forward-thinking and open-thinking, and hopefully that can really develop that relationship much further.
Fantastic facility. Thank you.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes, Jeremy, you made a good point before. I felt I would ask you about some figures that are sort of rising about council needing to embrace the potential of this place in terms of it being an art space and promote it a bit for community use. I don't see it as the council needing to promote itself at all. In fact, I almost hope the council's name is never there, but the community's name and Hamilton City's name should be what's up in lights and should be how it's promoted, I would see. But I'm looking at your figures of usage for the last 4 years, and I'm pretty sure it's an issue that I've raised before. You can see a gradual slippage in community usage percentage there over the years, and that's, I think it was right at the start, from memory, there was something just under 50%, but I could be wrong there, but I can certainly see the last 4 years the slippage, and I'm just wondering, is the problem the fact that council never tells anyone it's a community facility? Is it that you don't have the space available? Why is community use reducing as a proportion?
The way that community usage rises is that we have very regular users who are there every week or every month and come back year after year after year. And we've had some clients who have found other facilities for various reasons or couldn't afford us after a while. I've noted in this report Starjam were using us last year for their own workshops once a week, all the way through every school term. We lost them because they'd lost some funding. So therefore our usage is going to drop down. Before that we had a church group a couple of years ago who were using us every Sunday, as you would imagine, and they grew too big for us. They're now at Hamilton Girls High School. And, again, we lose suddenly 52 uses. Just like that, So we're vulnerable to the marketplace in terms of community groups and what their needs are and what their funding streams are, and so I guess like any business, we have to be very alert to that, and we're vulnerable to that as well.
Is that something that our staff, Andy, maybe, question to you, that might like to address at least the promotion or of it? And I note that our budgets are 165 a year, indicatively, for this line, and we're not spending it, and we haven't spent that budget level for a long time exactly. We've always had a bit of savings, inverted commas there. Is there some way that we could, if there's a group saying, look, we'd love to keep using it, it suits our needs absolutely, but we can't afford it, is there a way that we can be a little more creative within existing budgets and advised by our staff in that area? I don't know, that's off the top of my head sort of thinking that particular one. But maybe, I don't know whether you've got any comment, Andy, in this area.
I guess we'd be open to exploring with council things. We've obviously got a community assistance grants program which assists small groups, grassroots organisations in
No, but that's
terms
not
of
what
operating.
I'm not talking about
I'm
that at
aware,
all,
yeah.
because that's a once a year thing, opportunity. This is unspent budget. We know it's from history that it's going to be unspent, and it's looking like it's being more and more unspent each year. So we either should reduce the budget to a realistic level or look at a way of using it creatively to keep that community usage in the place, I would have thought. It's quite separate from our grants.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I could just make a comment. I think Councillor McPherson, you're right. It's probably us working a little bit closer with Jeremy around promotion and letting people know. And, we have various means of doing that cost effectively through City News and what have you. Promotion of, the provision, promotion and use of art spaces in the wider term is something that's been discussed at the Arts Forum, and Councillor Chesterman and I are council members on that, so, and Sarah Nathan and other people on that too. So it's a discussion that's happening around how do we get better utilisation, and that goes on from our discussion within council around community facilities. For example, there's the new black box theatres that'll be popping up in the Rototuna High School as well. So the school's quite interested in that discussion too. So that's something that we will be discussing at the Arts Forum. How do we actually promote the facilities? And if Jeremy's got particular issues and opportunities, then how do we actually address those issues and then promote the opportunities? Look, to be honest, we haven't looked at the, where we budget for the, is it the worst case or the best case scenario that Jeremy's full? And if there is a surplus there, then how do we use that in a way which is fair to all and gives people access? So that's something that we will look at.
Thanks, because I do think that we either shouldn't take the money from the ratepayers if we know we're not going to use it, or else we should be using it in a positive way, knowing that we're always going to have a bit of a gap there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, just a question. I think, following on from Councillor McPherson, I don't necessarily agree that you take up the slack by offering it back to people. I think before you sort of make some decisions about how to reallocate or spend money or see how it's spent, you actually ask people why they've stopped using the facility. So find out, get some facts first. But I would like to know, seeing there is a downward trend, so that's 10% in 3 years, and our threshold is 25% occupancy. What happens if the occupancy, for whatever reason, whether it's cost or unsuitability or moved on or disbanded, or it could be any number of reasons? What happens if community occupancy dips below 25%? What does that mean?
That's an extremely good question, and the contract that we have between University and City Council is pretty quiet on that. It doesn't have much to say about it. I mean, it's fortunately never happened, and at one stage we reached 47%, in fact, and that's when we had the regular church usage and also a dance group who was coming in twice a week. So, suddenly there's a huge surge, and also a drop-off in staff teaching because people were away on study leave, so the proportionality changed quite significantly. So I don't know is the answer. There's some discussion has to happen, obviously, between the two parties in the contract.
Yeah.
But we only have 3 years of that contract to run. So we're nearing the end of it.
Okay.
I think a larger discussion needs to take place
Yeah.
about what the future is,
Yeah.
really. And perhaps a percentage is not necessarily the best way to start defining that relationship. I don't know.
But perhaps it would be something to really dig a little bit deeper
Yeah.
and sort out that relationship.
I think a
and
partnership
communicate.
and going back to the point I made earlier on about the kind of cultural ecosystem of the city and how the Academy fits in with Rivoli, which now seems to almost own its own land, plus the other theatres, Clarence Street, which is run by a trust, Meteor run by a trust, Rototuna Theatre's coming. I mean, the landscape's changed quite considerably in terms of also what people might charge for the use of those spaces. And the Academy needs to adjust to that, I think, as well, and recognise it. And we can't just, we've been carrying on in a pretty similar kind of format because of the contract.
Yeah,
We need to be able to adjust.
98, yeah. Time has moved on, but yeah, those discussions and that relationship is going to improve and be closer, then that's definitely seems like the
I think so, yeah.
Deputy Mayor Chesterman.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Jeremy, I just want to say that the Academy continues to be an absolutely outstanding venue, and it's one that I always talk about as being of quality, of a top venue. And it was my privilege just recently as a guest of the Vice-Chancellor to hear the Roger Fox Big Band, and that was an exciting evening. But more importantly, the Academy has some other uses that I believe are community related. And in fact, on April 28, I'm attending the university breakfast to talk about their financial performance and the vision and so on. Now, that's generally attended by perhaps around 80 business leaders. So these are people from outside the university environment that come into the space, have a breakfast, and hear the Vice-Chancellor present how we've done and where we're going. So while that's not performing arts or theatre in any way, it's still another excellent use of space to showcase, if you like, the university offer. So well done. I enjoy being at the Academy for a whole range of events and functions.
Thank you.
Your Worship, have you got a question?
I just have a follow-up question. Does the council itself use the facility on occasion? And if it does, what category is it?
It would be community. Do you
We're a
classify?
community organisation?
I would say so.
And
yeah.
do we use it?
Very, very rarely. There have been one or two public meetings held there, but for direct bookings by the City Council in all the time that I've been there, maybe once or twice. Yeah.
And do you currently have a plan to increase the amount of community use? Do you currently have a plan in place for that?
I'll be honest and say no, we don't. The landscape in the university is changing in terms of what the university's vision for the future is with the new Vice-Chancellor, and as yet many things are unknown. And this is where I think the new potential contract in November 18 the discussion needs to start happening quite soon, because what the university wants to achieve in the Academy needs to align in some meaningful way with what the council wants to achieve there as well. And I would, I'd be grateful if both organisations could articulate that to me as the manager, so that we could start developing that plan in great detail.
Yeah, look, thanks for that. I just know that since I've been here, this has been declining.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked if you had a plan, because this is the 6th year.
And we've been very fortunate in having, regular users throughout the time, and we've never hit a time when we've had to kind of face the wall on that one and kind of say, look, we've got to do something here. Perhaps now's the time we need to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions? I've just got one on page 4 of your report. You've got the usage for 2015. What sort of utilisation does that equate to? And you've got 2015, there were 742 events booked into the facility. What does that, and there are, as I understand it, there's 3 separate theatres there. What does that actually roughly represent in terms of percentage utilisation? And I know that can be difficult because, do you...
It's
It
on
is,
there.
it is there,
Yeah,
There's a pie chart on page
But it-
5
Page
which
100.
shows...
but it doesn't show the unutilised percentage. I'm sort of
It's
looking at it
really-
from the
I
point
look, I
of
know,
view, how, you know, what's the percentage that the facility is actually empty, or the theatres are actually empty, when they,
It's really hard to, well, between midnight and 8 o'clock.
I
Right?
understand
Take that out of the
Yeah,
equation,
yeah,
then there's 365 days of the year. You know, I mean, it's kind of where you start to measure that and how you measure it. Look, the term use is in the contract as how we measure and present to council in this report. It is not defined, right? And so a usage could be a school ball which takes over the whole venue for the whole day and uses the whole venue in every way possible. Or it could be a leaving afternoon tea for a member of staff, which takes up a couple of hours in the upstairs lounge. In this measurement, they're both the same.
they're both single functions, aren't they?
They're both single functions.
That'd be two of the
They're both the
750.
use. So if you start measuring in terms of number of hours or the amount of use of each room, then the equation begins to get really hard to analyse.
Just, if I
Yeah.
rephrase the question, is it generally underutilised?
No. Well, it depends how you define underutilised. I mean, because we have the university teaching
Is it
going
empty
on,
more often than it's full?
No, no. We always have things going on, particularly during the teaching university weeks. Outside those, we'll have quite often conferences or something like that coming in because the space is free for that kind of thing.
Yep.
And even outside the university teaching weeks, there may be other university activities and community activities kind of going along together at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jeremy. No further questions. Let's put that the report be received. Have a mover for that? Councillor Gallagher? Councillor Mallett seconding. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, I do, and I'm wondering if I need to add, because obviously what I'm interested as a member of this Board of Governance is getting, with regard to some comprehensive discussion from our staff in conjunction with Jeremy as to where we want to go, because obviously we're about to, I see that the contract is, that ends in 2018, 2019. So in 2017, I'd like to get down and do some work. And also, I think you mentioned about, and I respect there's different levels, so I would suspect that the Vice-Chancellor's vision will be well known to certain groups, but I'd sort of give him a very warm and kind invitation to mix with individual 13 humbly elected councillors around partnerships, because I think it's important that we get a sense of where the University Council in these changing times is going and how we complement and work with that, because obviously that campus, I mean, I walk around, you know, I mean, it's huge other benefits that, you know, is a public space, which is fantastic. I think what I'm also looking from our staff is some very clear strategic thinking in terms of, you know, we've obviously, as we all know, got the loss of a particular performing arts venue for some time, potentially, and what is our sort of strategy to land appropriate groups, and obviously we've talked Claudelands, we've talked Meteor and Riverlea and Clarence, but the university, this centre is extremely important. This, Lance talked about the new black box, Rototuna, so I think it's that context I'd like the conversation, and trust me, I'm very, very supportive of council having a very, very close relationship with the university, and I do pick up Councillor McPherson's point about, you know, where we come to the debate is how we maximise, you know, the community use of that facility in a complementary way. So I'd actually just perhaps like to, just as a note, that the report be received, and note that staff will be reporting further in 2017 with reference to, and help me, Mr. Chair, with reference to the future renewal of the
So,
contract.
actually, you prefer to have something on the action list, or do you want, I mean...
Look, I'm in your hands. It's just often discussions happen and they sort of go away, you know. I just wanted, if we get action list to be fine.
If it gets onto my action list...
Yeah,
it will stay
I
there
trust your
until
action
it's
list.
dealt with. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine. You see what I'm trying to achieve.
Yep.
But I
And we need to do this in plenty of time before...
and the discussion I
Perhaps the
want is
GM can call.
strategic, you know, because it's not just about relationship, and I made some points where I think we can do better about explaining to our people our partnership about the facility, but it's actually relating to some other things as well. So it's quite a strategic discussion and a good one. And like the Deputy Mayor, obviously, it's a fantastic centre, there's no doubt about that.
Perhaps what we could do is add to the action list a report back from staff, perhaps early in 2017, to perhaps commence the process of advancing where we would go when the current contract expires.
And I'd be happy with that.
Councillor Forsyth just came over and asked me that question, so we've actually got in our work program from July onwards this year to start those discussions internally, and then obviously with Jeremy and the Academy as well, so that would fit in with our timeframes. Okay,
and it would be good to make sure that we get this report each year. I think this report has sort of dropped off the system in recent years, so this is an annual report, will serve as a reminder to the fact that there is some action required.
And
you happy with that,
Councillor? Yes, I am. And just the only final comment I'd make, what I'm really keen to see is the council and the university council and its vice-chancellor, if you like, share with us, because it's a two-way thing. You guys, dare I say it, may have some visions and ideas as to how you want to work with this council, not just in this area, and I acknowledge the work the Mayor does in her role, of course, in that building that relationship and others, but it's just giving us some focus as to direction of travel.
Right, any further discussion or debate?
I'll second the report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour that the report be received, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. All right, now, what I'd like to do, given Councillor Mallett's need to leave the meeting at 5:15, is now to move item 17 up as the next item of business. This is the internal audit services on page 116, at which I will vacate the chair, having already indicated a declaration of interest, and ask Councillor Mallett to chair that part of the meeting.
And rest assured, Rob's told me what he wants to have. Thank you. Okay, so we're on page 116, Finance Committee, contract 1100 and 050, internal audit.
Yeah, I'll talk to that, Deputy Chief.
Are you going to speak, eh?
I will.
Scott's up there as well.
So I'll take the report as read. Just like to add, Pricewaterhouse have been our internal auditors for the last 3 years. Council's aware of the change of guard, if you like, in terms of the finance leadership team, myself and the new financial controller. My view is that knowledge that PwC have gained over the last 3 years is valuable to myself and to Tracy, our financial controller, as we work through the findings of the induction, if you like. And my view is keeping PwC on for another 12 months gives that level of continuity around our finances intact. The contract does allow for a limit of $150,000, but that is not yet planned for at the moment. So the key feature of this report is to let's roll it 12 months, keep the continuity as Tracy and I work through finalising the risk profile in specific areas within council that we would like an internal audit program to work. Happy to take questions.
I just have a couple. On page 116, paragraph 11, council is currently reviewing its risk management framework.
Yep.
The risk management and identified risks drive councils. What's the difference between the risk framework and identified risks? Are they two different things?
No, the risk framework is the basis of which we then identify risks within council. So it discusses topics like council's risk appetite and how it sees risks.
So just give us a little more concrete example of what that means.
If we talked about health and safety, for example, it would be the appetite of council in terms of what level of risk council would see as appropriate that we would accept, as opposed to a higher seriousness of risk of which we would have to down tools and do something serious about it, addressing that risk. So it's really about the residual risks that we've identified and identifying exactly where council believes we feel comfortable with sitting. Every day there's risks in everything we do, so it's about putting a framework around that to give certainty in the process.
Okay, and the other thing I was going to ask, how do we measure the performance of an internal auditor?
That's a great question. Normally through the learnings that we get from an internal audit and from the points that they raise. So if we were to, for example, send them in the internal audit program to look at our receivables area, of which they do a full audit, and then we later find there are things they did not find, then that would obviously speak to the quality of their audit.
Okay, so there's been a couple of incidents like we had the water billing situation where there was a problem. We've had issues at the pools. I don't know if those things were identified. I don't think they were identified by the internal audit. I don't think they were identified by the internal auditor or any system that the internal auditors had put into place. I think they were identified just because we found something was wrong. We weren't hitting budgets and things like that.
I'd have to go back and look at the specifics.
And they're before your time too, sir.
Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah.
No, I guess I would be very interested if we knew how we could rank the quality of the service we're getting. It's a very tough one, right?
It is, but we are focused on owning and directing the pieces of work that they do, and reviewing that ourselves. And to date, from what I hear, we've been comfortable. Apart from outstanding items that haven't been addressed, that we're focusing on addressing over the next few months.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to move the report and the recommendations A, B, C and D when you're ready.
Do I have a seconder?
Just before that, question, if I may. This $960,000, is that for a 5-year contract then?
That's the value of all money previously spent over the past 3 years plus the 1-year extension. So the 1-year extension is $150,000.
Yep.
It's been approximately $810,000 spent on 4 years.
And how much time would these auditors or PwC actually spend on an annual basis actually doing this work? Would you have any idea?
I haven't quantified the level of time. It's just...
It just seems a hang of a lot of money for an auditor to come in and tell us what we're doing.
So perhaps I could assist, given I'm on the Audit and Risk Committee, and I respect that David's new and the Chief Executive isn't here. So the internal auditor, as an external, was appointed in the last council. They didn't really have an internal auditor, and there was a proper tender process and they were appointed. The Audit and Risk Committee approved a program of work which enables them to look at areas within the organisation that either have been raised through the Audit New Zealand process or that this council might have some concerns about, like councillors are concerned about something and it doesn't seem right, or that the Audit and Risk Committee identify needs closer inspection from an audit perspective. And they have had a program of work that councillors will have had a lot of visibility over because, you know, they're contained in reports we get, and then they do their investigations and then they present those reports and identify remedying requirements. So it's a managed program of work that develops out of concerns or areas that have been identified and reported, and then it's reported on. So that's kind of how it works. So it's not a random thing. They have a proper program of work. So that's how they work. So hopefully that's helpful. David probably hasn't been here long enough to see their reports are very detailed. They're contained in the Audit and Risk Committee reports, which councillors read and look at. And they're sort of a deep dive into everything. Personally, I've found some of those reports very, very useful, and as a result, a number of things have been changed in certain areas within the organisation to make them operate better, with better practices and, remedying some things that probably weren't right. I mean, there are other members on the Audit and Risk Committee that could speak.
David, how do they bill. So we're going for $150,000 for the next 12 months. Do they bill on a time basis, or
It's per
it's
piece
kind
of
a
work.
buffet?
Per piece of work that they do.
Okay, so $150,000 is just an estimate of what they'll be doing next
Correct.
year, or this year. Okay, thank you. Okay, any further questions? Right, I have a mover. I don't know if I had a seconder.
I'll second.
Okay, Councillor Forsyth and the Mayor. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you.
Gary, weren't you an auditor? We could get you to do it for free.
Not for free, mate.
Probably less than 150.
I'd have to go to the back of the room every time you put the topic up there, wouldn't I?
You weren't getting too comfortable here, Gary. Okay, thanks for that, Gary. Now, let's move back to item number 8, which is the 10-year monitoring report. And that's on page 25. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you.
David, you're both going to present.
Yep, I'll hand over to
Tracy
Tracy
is-
and then we'll
Okay, Tracy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Your Worship, Mr Chairman and Councillors, I would like to present to you today the 10-year plan monitoring report as at the end of March 2016. With regards to our overall operational results, we are continuing our favourable trend with our year-to-date surplus at $19.8 million, which is $14.8 million better than budget. As with previous months, the majority of this favourable variance above budget is due to vested assets, which are currently at $19.4 million above budget year to date, and the development contributions of $11.3 million above budget year to date. These are offset by the non-cash adjustment for an unrealised variance of interest rate swaps of $15.6 million unfavourable. Stuart Henderson will be presenting to Council on this particular area at the Council May briefing. Risks and opportunities. The key adjustments to the risk and opportunity schedule on page 64 since the last Finance Committee meeting include the indoor recreation grant that was signed off as part of the annual plan and an update to loss on asset sales and unrealised losses on rate swaps. Our total overall debt is currently at $342 million, which is $64.8 million less than the year-to-date target of $406.8 million. Our 12-month rolling debt to revenue ratio is currently sitting at 170%, which is well below the annual target of 205%. Again, this is largely due to the increased monies received from development contributions and the timing of spend and deferrals of Council's capital program. Capital expenditure. For the 9 months ended 31st March 2016, the amount spent on capital expenditure is $35.9 million. This is $21.5 million behind the year-to-date budget. Of the 128 projects currently being worked on, 29 of these have been identified as not able to be fully completed by June 2016. As per the request at the last Finance Committee meeting, we have included a table on page 29 which splits the 29 projects into reasons for deferral, which include third party, contractual, those within Hamilton City Council control and other. We've also identified which gross sales these projects are linked to. I'd like to now pass over to the GM of City Infrastructure to provide more details around these particular projects.
So, thank you, Tracy. So just a lot of the expenditure is in my group, obviously. Certainly my team is exceptionally busy on delivering all of our program. For City Infrastructure, if I just high level look at my program of works, in the final 3 months, which is April, which we're in now, May and June, it's about $18 million I have to spend if I normalise out the deferrals that we've signalled in the report. So for the first 9 months, we've been spending about $10 million for every 3 months. So for this last quarter, it's about $18 million that we have to achieve. So with 2 exceptions and 1 note, which I'll come to in a minute, I'm confident that we're largely on track with most of those projects. We have quite a few big ticket expenditure projects which are contractually committed and consuming a lot of funding, and in particular the Rotatuna Reservoir with our 2 major contracts let and underway, and probably about $4 million involved in that 3 months coming to charge. there's about $6 million of various renewals which are contractually committed in our transport and water business, which are on target to spend over the last 3 months, and a lot of other miscellaneous items. The notes that I wanted to make was that, as always, we're still at risk in some of our growth projects in those growth areas of third-party issues, although we are getting towards the end of the year and we're largely forecasting where we think third parties will slow us down, so that's getting smaller, but there still are some third-party risks. The two exceptions that I do want to bring to councillors' attention is, and one of them is signalled in the key project reports, which is our ring road. So we're just, we're probably will spend less than we predicted in this report on the ring road. So we've just been looking at the a risk workshop in terms of the work that we've got to do, the time of the year, and we think it's more prudent to start the works after the winter period. Previously, we were going to do some of the works, have a winter breakdown, and then continue the works. So we think it's more prudent, and this is just emerging to slow down that work. There are still some questions that we have to come back to council with as well in terms of the bridge and the design of the bridge. So that will result in probably a further deferral than what you see in front of you. But I do make the point, because of our forward funding commitment from NZTA, it doesn't have a financial impact, but it's a community expectation impact in terms of delivery of that project. The second project I want to bring to your attention is it is our Western Rail Trail. So the same issue again, we had a very optimistic program to try and finish that project by the end of this financial year. It's looking more likely to be by the end of this calendar year. We've just got into quite a tight construction period to build that. There's a lot of contractors very busy at the moment, so the pricing would not be competitive. So our view on that one, which we're just pulling together at the moment, is to complete that by the end of the calendar year, which would mean a deferral. So most of the funding for that is the Urban Cycleway Fund, and the balance is a share between NZTA and Hamilton City Council. So the City Council's share of funding is a small portion of that. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anything else to report, Tracy? Okay, well, we'll open for questions. Just, can I ask the first question this time, if that's all right, Councillor Miller? Yeah. I just wanted to follow on from Chris's comments there. Is the ring road part of the 83.7 million, which was part of the capital program for this current financial year? Is the ring road extension included in the 83.7 million?
Yes, I just struggling with that figure. I thought it was 84, but that.
Okay, I've got 83.7,
yeah,
but
whatever's in the
okay,
report,
which is the adding together of it. Yep.
Yep. So that's the total budget for the project, which has been going for the 5 years.
Yep.
And the last section is completing to Cobden Drive, and the budget is included in that.
So if that is now deferred or some of finalising that is deferred now until the next financial year, does that then increase the 16.7 million, which is in that table on page 29 of what is already being deferred?
Yes, so the impact of this emerging information would probably increase that figure by perhaps $2 million.
$2 million, okay. And is the Western Rail Trail, is that exactly the same too, is it? Is that part of the 83 or 84?
No, the Western Rail Trail is not part of that
Not
project.
part of that, okay.
It's a separate project, and council's share is about $500,000. So
okay.
It'll be a deferral of about
So,
$500,000, which is not signalled.
okay, all right, that's fine, thank you. All right, now questions.
Thank you. Just a couple of big picture ones, Tracy. On page 25, paragraph 5, council's financial performance year to date is a surplus of 19.8 million. As at the last quarter, December, our surplus was 24.6 million. So our surplus has actually reduced significantly, eh? That's like a huge reduction. So there must be something really obvious that's what's made that. Is that the?
It's all that, that's all listed there.
So
Okay, so what are the big
page
ones?
28, you'll see that the,
Swaps.
yeah,
So it's what?
so it's mainly the swaps. So on
That's the
page
swaps.
28, you'll see the difference between the December variance and the March variance,
Okay.
and the majority of that is the timing of the swaps.
And so the swaps, so that tells us that the swaps was a quote-unquote insurance against higher interest rates.
That's correct.
In fact, interest rates have dropped, so that insurance is worth less than we thought it was going to be. So we've taken a accounting loss on that, not a cash loss. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. Page 27, page 25, paragraph 7, the same sort of thing has happened in our building consents. Paragraph 7, building consents were up 16% on the, oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, second part of it, on the previous year's volume, and 25%, so our building consents were up 25% as at the 31st of March. They were up 31% as at the 31st of December. So is it just normal that things slow down over January, February, or has we lost some staff, or has demand just suddenly dropped off?
It wouldn't be linear. It would be.
Okay, so what's the answer? I'm giving you all the possible answers. Tell me which one it is.
Can I get some help from Calvin and your team? Have you any idea? What the revenue for building consents is not linear every month. There's a drop off since the last quarter. So does that? What's the trigger for that?
Yeah, so it's not linear at all, and it's gone. In fact, it dropped a little bit in February, and then it's come back over the month of March. So we expect that it will continue on.
So it's a significant change, eh? So we've gone from, we were 31% ahead, now we're only 25%, and another one of those against last year. Last year we were 32% ahead. This year we're only 19%. So
It fluctuates, but the trend is still upward.
So it's still going up, but instead of going up like that, it's going up.
Correct.
So, okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, we talked about carryovers. Okay, on page 33, the first item is rates excluding water rates. And the note 1 says that there's an increase in penalties due to a change in the timing of rates arrears penalties. Can someone explain what that means? So the note is on page 34. Second bullet.
My understanding from that is just the timing of when the budget was, so they've obviously changed the date from the 1st of September from the 7th of July. So from a year-to-date perspective, that would have been different. But
Tracy, can you just put your microphone in front of your face a bit?
Sorry.
Thank you.
So that's probably no longer relevant now that we've gone through the second quarter.
So what did you just say then? The note is wrong.
Yes, because it's to do with the timing when the penalties were due in. So from a year-to-date perspective,
So who wrote
it's
the note?
obviously now aligned.
So the explanation is wrong. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. So what should the explanation be? Why has the major drivers of the 804,000 favourable rate position is an increase in penalties income? So is that no longer the case?
I'll find out for you.
Okay. So
we'll take a point and we'll just come back to you on that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, page 37. Just on the very bottom in the commentary, it says parking debt of $2 million was written off as at the 30th of June 2015. Can someone explain what that was? What's the process whereby we write off parking debt? Why was it written off?
It's in the previous year, Gary.
I think that was the subject of a report that came to council, and it was about fines lodged with the court where they've been going for 5 years. We came to council with a report to write off 5 years of that debt.
So that's 5 years of debts, is it?
It's 5 years of fines that went to court and people who didn't pay them and they've written off. But it was subject to a specific report that came to council, so that number's reflecting that number from memory.
And it impacted on the previous year's accounts, didn't it? It hasn't affected
I
this
think
year.
It was, in our doubtful debts, we make provisions for not getting the revenue from those fines, so it was just the accounting exercise of writing off the debt that hadn't been followed, so that was the subject of the report.
Okay, so that's not a reason for parking revenue to be down, because that would have already been taken out of revenue into overdue debts or undoubtful debtors or something, and then it was just the write-off part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The arts and culture, page 41. Just the subsidies and grants have dropped by about $500,000. I assume that we must have had a big grant last year that we didn't get this year, or we forgotten to put some applications in.
Where are you, Gary?
Sorry, so page 41.
Yep.
Revenue, the fourth item down is subsidies and grants. We got $505,000 worth as at 31st March 2015. We got 5,000, so $500,000 less.
It was lotteries grant for us They Fell exhibition at the museum, so it was a one-off.
So that's a one-off grant?
It was a one-off,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, economic development, page 45. This is about the fallen revenue from activities, which is down significantly from last year. If you look at the third line down, it's revenue from activities. Last year, at this stage of the year, we're 7.5 million. This year, we're 5.7 million. And part of the explanation is loss of rent from Beggs Wiseman's. Now, my memory is that we haven't been getting rent from the Beggs Wiseman's building for quite some time. It hasn't just been vacant recently, has it? And certainly not of that magnitude, anyway.
Perhaps I may, Councillor Mallett, I'll answer on behalf of Kelvin. Since I was involved, no, it was budgeted revenue, but it had been empty for a very long time, as you say, but it had been budgeted as income.
Yeah, but hang on. Okay, so there is a hole of about $1.8 million worth of revenue from activities.
Yeah.
Just compared to last year, not against the budget, compared to last year. So last year we got, at this stage of the year, we'd earned $7.9 million revenue from activities. This year we've earned $5.7 million from revenue from activities. So there's a whacking great hole in there. And it can't be because of the Beggs Wiseman's building, because the Beggs Wiseman building has been vacant or it's had minuscule rent for the last 2 or 3 years, so that's not the reason.
Look, I'm sorry, I can't answer with the exact numbers, but there will also be a number of other buildings that we've since sold over the last 12 months, so the revenue would have been lost from those areas as well, but I can't give you those numbers.
Okay, well, okay, that's fine, but the explanations here, that if you look at the variance explanations in the little box, in the first paragraph, this variation is also driven by a shortfall in rental income from the Beggs Wiseman's building. So people are not feeding us, we're getting fed.
Yeah, look, I think you have a very fair point there, and we'll have a look at that for you.
We will look at it. I think the point was made there. It wasn't a dollar value in there. It was just saying it's another contributing factor to the reduction in revenue.
But it can't. I mean, the Beggs Wiseman's building hasn't provided income for a long, long time.
Yeah. Well, we'll take a look at that and come back to you.
So if I didn't pick these things out, how would they get picked up?
Well, other people do look at them though, Gary.
Yeah, I know, but not many people are.
A number of the ones that you've raised I've highlighted.
Yeah,
but if I could just, Chair, just a question on this. Who writes these notes? Who writes the notes?
Our accounting team.
Okay, who checks the notes?
Within the accounting team, the structure.
And the general managers?
Yep.
The general managers review them?
You know, there's often the cut and paste, and there is the irrelevant, and there's the not up to date.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll get back to you. It's frequent.
Can
Can I just point out the variance descriptions are variance to this year's budget,
Correct.
not variance to year-to-date last year, which Councillor Mallett was referring to before. So if you need explanations around that, that would be separate to the instructions that staff are given to put the variances in this report.
No, I get that, but the purpose of notes is to explain something that's out of the ordinary. And so that the reader can say, oh, that explains why that's up, down, different, not right. It's not a narration of a whole pile of things. Yeah.
Like we all know, the reason we ask these questions because it's part of our job, not because we want to or anything, it's just part of the job you have to do.
No,
Yeah.
no problem.
Okay. Okay, page 47, community support. The first note talks to a variance represents income that will not be received from the pensioner now that the pensioner housing has been sold. Just a timing thing here. When did we stop receiving income from the pensioner housing? I know we've sold them, and I can't remember when the date was we stopped getting income. We don't own them anymore, do we?
No.
Yeah, I think so. That's settled.
March.
Okay.
It was early March.
So has it affected the Q3 result?
If we're not getting the rental income, it will affect.
Okay, so do you know? So it affected. Did we get rent for January, February, March?
Yeah, and it was sold in March.
So we got rent in January. So it didn't affect the January rent. Last year would have been the same. Didn't affect the February rent, and might have affected a couple of weeks worth of thing. Okay, well then, to say that, I mean, again, the rent from the income from last year, the rent from activities. You're talking this year it's 1.450. Last year it was 1.595. So rent from pensioner housing is the reduction in rent from pensioner housing over that period of time is totally immaterial compared to account for a loss of $150,000.
It appears that way. There needs to be a fuller reconciliation on that.
Pardon?
It appears that way, so we need to come back to him with a fuller reconciliation.
Okay. Parks and Gardens, 49. Again, revenue from activities. About 400,000 down from last year, about almost 20%. Does anyone know what caused that? What's the revenue from activities that would cause us to drop 20% from last year? What's missing?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you, but I'll have to look into that and get back to you offline. Comparison to last year, I have to look at what was in last year's budget compared to this year.
Well, it's last year's actual versus this year's actual.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just though make the point, Councillor Mallett, we are really measuring activity this year against this year's budget rather than against last year, because there may have been reasons, and if you look at this year's budget year to date, it's 1.593 million.
Yep.
And the actual is 1.8, so it's actually ahead of budget. So there may well have been reasons why, when the budget was set at the beginning of this financial year, that there was going to be some changes in revenue. So I think it's more relevant, and I think Lance has already picked up on that we should be referring perhaps to the comparison between the actual and the budget year to date.
Well,
because staff have set the budget, we approved the budget, and so our measurement in terms of whether or not the staff are performing should be in relation to the budget rather than in relation to last year's actual.
There's some validity in what you said, but also
there's a lot of validity in what I said.
Yeah, performance against last year is just as important.
No, because there may well have been a reason to change last year's.
Thanks,
we would have signed off on the
reason. Yeah, but hang on. If there was a reason for that, we should be being told for that.
No, but we would have been told when we signed up on the annual plan.
And then can you tell us why?
No, I can't.
Okay, and there would be some managers here who possibly should be able to tell us those things.
Yeah, I suppose, but I
Just,
think
it's all about governance. It's
Yeah,
all about making sure
think
the
the
figures
point is
look
well
real,
made.
the figures look
Councillor-
right.
Councillor Mallett, we should have asked those questions at
Keep
the
going
time when the
backwards.
budget was being set, to say, why is revenue from activities for parks and green spaces,
Going to be
which
done.
obviously was 2.2 million last year, was going to drop to 1.5 million this year in terms of the budget expectations. And
Okay.
there may well have been an activity or two.
Those might be the questions you want to ask. These are the questions I want to ask, okay? I just have a different point of view.
Except the chair is running the meeting, Councillor Mallett.
There are a whole lot of questions you wish you'd asked, weren't there, Gordon? You just
Come on,
wish you had
let's-
asked those
Let's get on with
questions.
the questions, councillor.
If you had your time again, you would. Okay, transportation. Revenue's down, again, revenue down on activities. Car parking is down 474,000, about 10% from last year. Now, my memory is that this is a continuing trend. 2015, our car park revenue is down. I don't know how long it's been going for. Any idea what's causing that?
So councillor, the item referred to there is on-street car parking, and you are right, we have a budget. It's dependent largely just on the economic activity and people putting money into the meters. So what we put up is a budget and a target of what we're going to get, and you are right, from year on year, we haven't been meeting budget and we've been adjusting, so there is a bit of a downward trend there.
So just on the bigger picture about why I refer back to last year, there are trends occurring which you can identify by seeing in changes in revenue over a year, which you can't see against the budget. So there is a clear trend that, presumably, putting it bluntly, there are few people parking in the CBD. Is that what it means, Chris? I suppose? And fewer people with expired warrant
In a
witnesses.
broad sense, because that, the loss in revenue is coming from the meter revenue, yes.
Could I suggest that there probably is a good case in point as to why the revenue's down there? If we think back, in the previous year we owned the Knox Street car park. We no longer own the Knox Street car park, and here's a particular valid example why I would have expected the staff to have set the budget from parking revenue to be down in the current year, because we would not be receiving the revenue from that car park.
I think, with due respect, Chair, that got normalised at the last year, so this is about on-street car parking.
On-street,
If you
I
look
see.
at the unfavourable revenue from on-street parking, 148. If you look at the off-street car parking, most of our car parks are doing really well, and Knox Street has been taken account of in this year's budget. That happened last year. We do have an issue with the riverbanks with the VOTR works, and we had a large revenue stream from that, which we're not getting now because of the works. So the unfavourable is largely from on-street car parking.
Thank you.
So it's an area that I've asked David and his team to come and just review with me as we're moving into the 2016-17 budget setting. Remember also that councillors, we've made some assumptions about the new parking technology and the changes to timing, etc. So we're resetting the budgets, and once again we're trying to estimate what the parking revenue will do with the changes to the CBD parking.
Thank you. Like I said, that's a good example where councils get a big picture view of what's going on year to year by referring back to the previous year's incomes. Okay, page 64. We're on risks and opportunities. The budget for the river plan was approved to be funded by savings identified through the support services review. That's $250,000. Has that been achieved? And I think the support services review was the thing Eon was doing, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, so something's in the threats and opportunities, risks and opportunities to be funded by something else. Can anyone tell me if that's been achieved?
The support service review looked at a number of efficiencies, which some of you can see in the personnel cost savings in the accounts, as well as.
Sorry, David, what?
So the support services review that Eon did was looking at how we could save money within council.
Yep, understand what it was. Yep.
And so as a result of that, there was some positions that were vacant that were not hired, and so those savings are found in the personnel costs line. There's also, in terms of the annual plan going into 2016-17, the additional restructure savings of $450,000 that was the chief executive put in there going forward.
So the answer is yes, that there were sufficient savings found in the support services review to cover the budget of the river plan. Thank you.
So just to follow on from that, to answer that, Councillor Mallett, does that mean it should be removed from the risks and opportunities, or does it stay there until the end of the year?
Until the end of the year, it's the segment.
Until the end of the year, okay.
So presumably there's a credit in here somewhere that says savings found from the service review, is it? Because I haven't seen that.
Not an hour, no, but you'll see it in the accounts. Our current surplus year to date is showing savings of personnel costs from budget.
Okay, it would be logical, wouldn't it, if you're going to fund something from the services review and you put the debit in here and the funding source is achieved, and would it be? I mean, I might be wrong, but wouldn't it be logical to put it in here as well, or not?
Either way, but I take your point. We can do that
Or
for the
remove
next one.
Or simply remove it from.
Yeah, otherwise I'll just ask this every month. Now, this is the One Victoria Trust. Again, I've raised this before. We haven't given them their $75,000 because the earthquake strengthening still hasn't been done. Again, is there any? Is there an update on that?
No, there is no further update from the One Victoria Trust. They have raised a significant amount of money towards the cost that they need to raise, but they still need quite a bit more. I think they're still short by around 600,000 on their plan. So we're waiting to hear from them, but there'll be no payments until such a time they have a plan and funding.
So, and just remind me that this thing was there a time that they had to get it done by? Sorry, you might have told me this.
Yes, there is a time they need to have it done by, and certainly January 2017 is a key date for them to consider.
Okay.
Did you say 600,000?
I think close to that, yes, from memory. I read something last week.
For the earthquake upgrade?
They've already got over half of that.
Okay, page 69. The Clauden's Bridge Life Plan. So this is page 69. So it's item number 6 on the grid in front of you. Is it still expected to be completed this year? Because we're getting close. Clauden's Bridge Life Plan.
Yep, Councillor, it's just our normal asset management activity. In the 10-year plan, we identified that it was timely to go into a special inspection of some of our bridges. So we do routine inspections. But this was to go in and do a quick poke and prod around and look at the foundations and just have a really good look at the structural issues on the bridge. So it's just part of our normal asset management planning for our structures.
Okay, and so that's going to be done. That has been done or will be done.
Yep.
Okay. We wouldn't get we don't get a report back on that, do we? Unless there's something.
If I found something seriously wrong, you would.
So I go across that bridge a bit.
Like our routine reports, it's saying it's in good nick with the bridge. But this is just about every 10 years or something like that. It's you need to go and have a really good look at foundations and a few other things.
Okay. Thank you. And the last one, page 92.
92. Is that in another report?
Oh, yes. There's just some figures out of the Claudelands thing.
Oh, we'll come to that when we do the Claudelands report.
Well, I can.
Do I have any other questions from other councillors, Your Worship?
I just want to talk about the capital program. So I'm on page 29 and I'm looking at the schedule. So Chris, can you just clarify again for me, because the bulk of these are yours. Paragraph 32, 29 projects have been identified as not being completed by the end of this year. So just, you said something about some of those, did you, that you thought were going to be completed, or not? I'm on page 29, paragraph 32.
Yep, so most of those projects and the value of 16.7 will not be completed this
right.
year.
Yep, okay.
So what I've
That's fine.
identified is 2 projects that will add to that number.
Yes, okay, so that will be 31 projects not completed, will it?
One of those projects is already on there, but the number's just bigger.
All right, be 30 projects then, and it'll be closer to 18 million. Have I got that right?
20 million.
Probably 20, yeah.
Okay. So you're expecting now, because we're getting close to 30 June, that it'll be 30 projects and it'll be around about 20 million?
Correct.
Okay. And of those projects, what proportion are yours, number-wise?
Number-wise, I'd have to count them up, Your Worship.
Like, are they about three quarters?
14 or 15.
Okay. Half? There are a lot that are yours.
About 17, I think.
Okay, around about 17. All right. So, some of them relate to Founders Theatre, the additional ones, so I understand the situation with those. Am I right? We're not going to do the Founders Theatre ones, right? Understandable. Am I right that one of them is a museum activity building renewals? Installation of new chillers. That's on here, right? I'm right? So
Yeah.
why can't we do that one? What's the reason?
There's some, it's quite complicated, the chillers, which is for the temperature control for,
The artwork?
yeah, various tonga. There's been some, it's been a bit more technical than we thought, and it's going to take longer than what was expected to actually replace those. So the work's in train, but it's going to cross over the 2 financial years.
Okay, all right, so a partial deferment.
Yeah,
Okay,
pretty much.
all right. There's another one here, it's Tenancy Inducement Renewals, number 5. What's that? This is on page 60, it's in these long sheets. What is that?
Those are bribes to get people to renew their leases, aren't they?
Look, that's in my area, Your Worship. I'm not sure what that is. I'll have to go and find out.
Great, add it to the list. Number 9, a public toilet at a destination playground.
It's a Lake Domain toilet, so we think we'll be finished by the 30th of June, but we may not be, just depending upon weather and...
So was that just late starting? Was it hard to get people to do it? Or because I am hearing that it is quite difficult to get some of these smaller contracts contracted.
That's correct, Your Worship. We've found for some of our tendered work for smaller jobs, the market's pretty hot at the moment, and we're finding it difficult to get contractors. For some of our Hamilton Gardens work, we're only getting one tenderer, and some tenders we're getting none.
Right.
And the prices are high.
Yes, okay. That's fine. And then the information services projects unlikely to be completed by 30th of June. This one's on page 6137. IS. What is that and why?
So what that is the Council's rate system authority. So it was planned to renew that this year, but there have been challenges in terms of the organisation's infrastructure being ready to receive that new upgrade. So it's a risk-based decision where we've deferred that until we're ready to do that project.
Okay, so we're not ready to receive the the new system, and so better not start it.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, the rest of them are pretty much you, Chris. Lots of you. All right, that's fine. Chair, could I just, it might be timely to have an IT report? Perhaps you might
For
just
the
want
next
to consider
meeting?
it. Yeah, I don't know, just, you know, have a look at it. You know, one that's not technical in nature, one that tells us where
Put that
we're
on
at.
the action list, please.
Yeah, okay. And I just wanted to ask here, on page 29, under HCC control, it's got 4 citywide and 5 corporate. So those 9 projects that are totally in our control, so I've picked out a couple of them. So I don't need to know today, but I understand the impediments when we're in third-party relationships and lots of things cause delay. But the ones that are in our control, I want those specifically itemised for the next finance meeting, and exactly why they have not been able to be completed. And I guess in doing that list, there will be some heat put on getting them completed, if that's possible. I just have a question in relation to page 34.